Jake Miller kicked a rusty can down the dark tunnel, watching it bounce off the concrete walls. The 10-year-old wasn't supposed to be in the old maintenance tunnels beneath New Denver Colony, but his mom was working another double shift at the medical center, and staying in that tiny apartment felt like being trapped in a box. The tunnels were different. Quiet. Nobody telling him what to do or where to go. Down here, he could think without hearing the constant buzz of worried adults talking about the war with the Iron Fleet. The grown-ups always got that look in their eyes when they mentioned the aliens, like they were scared but trying not to show it. Jake had been exploring these tunnels for months, ever since he found the loose grate near the recycling center. Most of the passages were empty except for old pipes and broken equipment left behind when the colony expanded upward instead of down. But today felt different. There was a smell in the air, not the usual musty dampness, but something else. Something that reminded him of ozone after a lightning storm. He followed his nose deeper into the tunnels, past the familiar graffiti left by other kids who had found this place over the years. The smell grew stronger as he turned a corner into a section he'd never explored before. Ancient lights flickered overhead, casting weird shadows on the walls. That's when he heard it. A soft whimpering sound, like a puppy in pain. Jake stopped walking and listened carefully. The sound came again, definitely not a puppy. It sounded almost like crying, but not quite human. His heart started beating faster. Every kid in the colony had heard the stories about what lurked in the deep places. But this didn't sound dangerous. It sounded scared. Following the sound, Jake crept forward until he reached a wider section of the tunnel where old machinery created lots of hiding spots. The whimpering was coming from behind a big metal box that used to house electrical equipment. Jake took a deep breath and peered around the corner. What he saw made him gasp. Huddled in the corner was the smallest person Jake had ever seen, smaller than his 6-year-old neighbor Tommy, but somehow different. The little figure had skin that seemed to glow with a soft blue light, and when it looked up at him, Jake saw the biggest, most frightened eyes he'd ever encountered. They were purple, like the sky just before sunrise, and filled with tears. The creature, Jake's mind struggled to process what he was seeing, wore what looked like the torn remains of some kind of jumpsuit. Its tiny hands were scratched and dirty, and Jake could see its ribs showing through the thin fabric. It had been a long time since this little being had eaten a proper meal. For a moment, they just stared at each other. Jake's brain told him he should run, should tell the colony guards, should follow all the protocols they drilled into every kid about reporting alien contact immediately. But looking at this small, terrified creature, all Jake could think about was how scared and hungry it looked. The little being tried to scramble away, but it was too weak to move fast. It made soft clicking sounds that might have been words in some language Jake didn't understand. The sounds were gentle, not threatening at all. "Hey, it's okay," Jake said softly, the way he talked to stray cats. "I'm not going to hurt you." The creature stopped trying to run and tilted its head, studying Jake's face. Those big purple eyes seemed to look right into his soul, and somehow Jake knew this wasn't one of the scary aliens from the war stories. This was just a kid, like him, but from somewhere far away. Jake slowly reached into his backpack and pulled out his lunch. His mom had packed him a sandwich, some crackers, and a juice box, nothing fancy, but it was food. The little being's eyes followed his movements, and Jake saw hope flicker in that purple gaze. "You're hungry, aren't you?" Jake whispered. He unwrapped the sandwich and broke off a piece, holding it out carefully. The creature looked at the food, then at Jake, then back at the food. Slowly, it reached out one small hand and took the bread. It sniffed it first, then took a tiny bite. Its eyes went wide, and it made a soft sound that Jake somehow knew meant thank you. Jake moved a little closer and set the rest of his lunch on the ground between them. "You can have my food," he whispered, speaking the words that would change everything. "You look like you need it more than I do." The little being ate slowly, carefully, like each bite was precious. And Jake sat there in the dim tunnel, watching over this strange new friend he'd found in the darkness below their world. Every morning before school, Jake would sneak down to the tunnels with food tucked into his backpack. At first, the little alien would hide whenever she heard his footsteps, but after a few days, she started waiting for him in the same spot behind the old electrical box. Jake began calling her Echo because of the soft clicking sounds she made that seemed to bounce off the tunnel walls. Echo was definitely a girl, Jake decided. Something about the way she moved and the gentle sounds she made reminded him of his little cousin back on Earth. But Echo was different in ways that amazed him. Her blue skin wasn't just colored, it actually glowed softly in the dark tunnels, like she had tiny stars under her skin. And her big purple eyes seemed to see everything, even in the shadows where Jake could barely make out shapes. The first week was mostly about food. Echo was so thin that Jake worried she might disappear entirely. He started bringing bigger lunches, telling his mom he was going through a growth spurt. She seemed happy that he was eating more and packed extra sandwiches, fruit, and cookies without asking questions. Jake felt bad about lying, but every time he saw how grateful Echo looked when he arrived with food, he knew he was doing the right thing. Communication was hard at first. Echo's clicking sounds meant different things, but Jake couldn't understand any of it. So they started using their hands instead. Jake would point to things and say the words in English. Echo would touch the same things and make her clicking sounds, then try to copy Jake's words. Her voice was softer than any human's, like wind through leaves, but she was a fast learner. After 2 weeks, Echo could say Jake and food and thank you. Jake learned that the clicking sound that went up at the end meant yes, and the one that went down meant no. It wasn't much, but it was a start. The breakthrough came when Jake cut his hand on a sharp piece of metal while exploring deeper in the tunnels. He hissed in pain and looked at the blood running down his palm. Before he could reach for the bandage in his backpack, Echo was beside him. She looked worried, the first real emotion Jake had seen clearly on her face. Echo gently took Jake's injured hand in both of hers. Her skin was warm and smooth, not cold like he'd expected. She closed her eyes and Jake felt a strange tingling sensation. When she opened her eyes again and let go of his hand, the cut was completely gone. Not even a scar remained. Jake stared at his palm in amazement. How did you do that? Echo made a series of soft clicks and pointed to herself, then to Jake, then made a gesture like she was giving him something. Jake understood, somehow, she could heal people. It was like something out of the adventure stories he loved to read. As the days went by, Echo got stronger and healthier. Her skin glowed brighter, and she could walk around the tunnels without getting tired. But Jake noticed other things too. When he felt sad about his mom working so much, Echo would tilt her head and look at him with those big eyes, and somehow she seemed to know exactly how he felt. When he was excited about finding a new passage in the tunnels, Echo would get excited too, even before he told her about it. One afternoon, Jake brought down some old paper and crayons from school. He thought maybe Echo could draw pictures to help them communicate. What she drew broke his heart. The first picture showed a big oval shape with smaller shapes inside it, clearly some kind of spaceship. The second picture showed the same ship with jagged lines around it and dark scribbles that looked like storm clouds. The third picture showed the ship broken into pieces, with tiny figures scattered around it. Echo pointed to one of the tiny figures, then to herself. Your family? Jake asked quietly. Echo made the clicking sound that meant yes, and Jake saw tears in her purple eyes. She drew another picture of 3 figures standing together, 2 big ones and 1 small one. Then she drew the same picture with the small figure all alone. Jake felt his own eyes getting watery. Echo had lost her parents, just like he'd lost his dad in the war. But at least Jake still had his mom. Echo had nobody. You're not alone anymore, Jake said, putting his hand gently on Echo's shoulder. I'm your friend now. Echo looked at him and made a new sound, not clicking, but almost like humming. Jake somehow knew it meant she was happy. And when she put her small hand over his, Jake felt a warm sensation that told him she understood friendship, even across the vast space between their worlds. But outside the tunnels, the war with the Iron Fleet was getting worse, and the colony security patrols were getting stricter about checking for alien infiltrators. Jake had been visiting Echo in the tunnels for almost a month when he started feeling sick. At first, it was just a headache and feeling tired. He figured it was from staying up late doing homework after his daily trips underground. But by the 3rd day, Jake could barely get out of bed. His mom took his temperature and her face went pale. 104 degrees, she muttered, grabbing her medical kit. Jake, honey, have you been anywhere you shouldn't have been? Anywhere dirty or damp? Jake's heart sank. He knew exactly what was wrong with him. Tunnel fever was something every colony kid learned about in health class. The old underground areas had bacteria that could make people really sick if they spent too much time down there. Most kids who got it recovered with medicine, but some didn't make it. I might have explored some old areas near the recycling center, Jake admitted weakly. His mom gave him medicine and made him stay in bed, but Jake felt worse every hour. His head pounded like someone was hitting it with a hammer, and his whole body ached. But all he could think about was Echo, waiting for him in the dark tunnels with no food and no idea why he hadn't come. On the 2nd day of being bedridden, Jake's 12-year-old sister Lily came home from her friend's house and found him burning up with fever and talking nonsense. Their mom was still at work, and Lily got scared when Jake started rambling about purple eyes and glowing friend in the dark. Jake, you're scaring me, Lily said, putting a cool cloth on his forehead. "What are you talking about?" Have to help Echo," Jake mumbled. "She's waiting, she's hungry." Lily had always been the responsible one, the one who followed rules and never got in trouble. But seeing her little brother so sick made her desperate. When Jake kept repeating tunnel and behind the electrical box, Lily made a decision that would change everything. She grabbed a flashlight in Jake's backpack, stuffed it with food from the kitchen, and headed for the tunnels. Finding the loose grate wasn't hard. Jake had shown her once, even though he'd made her promise never to go down there alone. The tunnels were scarier than she remembered, full of strange sounds and shadows that moved in the flashlight beam. But Lily kept walking, following Jake's directions from his fevered rambling. When she finally found the right section and called out Echo, she heard a soft clicking sound from behind the old machinery. A small figure emerged from the shadows, and Lily's breath caught in her throat. Echo was even more beautiful and strange than Lily had imagined from Jake's delirious descriptions. The little alien looked up at Lily with those enormous purple eyes, and Lily could see confusion and worry written all over her glowing face. "Jake, sick," Lily said slowly, not sure if Echo would understand. She pointed up toward the surface. "Jake, not come, fever." Echo's expression changed immediately. She made urgent clicking sounds and started moving toward the tunnel exit. Lily realized Echo wanted to go to Jake, but that was impossible. No alien could walk through the colony without causing total panic. Then Echo did something that shocked Lily completely. She grabbed Lily's hand and suddenly, Lily could feel what Echo was feeling. Worry, fear, and something else, a deep sadness that felt like losing someone important. Echo was scared that Jake might die, just like her family had died. "You can't go up there," Lily said gently. But maybe Jake can come down here?" Getting Jake to the tunnels in his condition seemed impossible, but Lily was determined. She waited until their mom left for her night shift, then helped her feverish brother out of bed and down to the tunnels. Jake was so weak he could barely walk, and by the time they reached Echo's hiding spot, he collapsed on the tunnel floor. Echo rushed to Jake's side and placed her small hands on his burning forehead. The same warm glow that had healed Jake's cut before spread from her hands across his face and down his body. Lily watched in amazement as her brother's breathing became easier and the terrible heat of his fever started to fade. After several minutes, Jake opened his eyes and looked up at Echo with a weak smile. "I knew you'd help me," he whispered. But when Jake sat up and saw Lily standing there, his face went white. "Lily, you can't be here. If anyone finds out." "Nobody's going to find out," Lily said firmly. "Echo saved your life. I'm not going to let anything happen to her." Over the next hour, as Jake recovered his strength, Echo showed Lily the drawings she'd made. But there were new pictures now, ones that made both siblings understand how much bigger this situation really was. Echo drew ships that looked nothing like her crashed vessel. These were dark, angular shapes with weapon ports clearly visible. She drew them chasing other ships that looked like hers, peaceful, rounded vessels with no visible weapons. Then she drew a symbol that both Jake and Lily recognized from colony defense briefings, the Iron Fleet emblem. "The Iron Fleet was chasing your people too?" Lily asked. Echo nodded and made the clicking sound for yes. Then she drew more pictures showing her people, the Vari, she called them through a combination of sounds and gestures, fleeing from world to world, always running from the same enemy that threatened humanity. But as the siblings learned more about Echo's story, security alarms started echoing through the colony above. Someone had detected the energy signatures from Echo's healing, and patrol teams were being dispatched to search the underground areas. The secret was about to become much harder to keep. The security teams found them 3 days later. Jake and Lily had been taking turns bringing food to Echo, trying to keep their visits short and random so no one would notice a pattern. But the energy detectors kept picking up readings from the tunnels, and Colony Commander David Chen wasn't the type of man to ignore potential threats. Jake was teaching Echo some new English words when they heard the heavy boots marching through the tunnels. Multiple flashlight beams cut through the darkness, and stern voices echoed off the concrete walls. "Search every section. Whatever's down here has been giving off energy signatures for weeks." Echo's skin immediately dimmed, and she pressed herself against the back wall of her hiding spot. Jake could feel her fear through the emotional connection she sometimes shared with him. His own heart was pounding so hard he thought the security team might hear it. "Jake Miller, we know you're down here," Commander Chen's voice boomed through the tunnels. "Your sister told us everything when we questioned her at school today." Jake felt like he'd been punched in the stomach. Lily had promised to keep the secret, but the colony's interrogation methods were designed to break down even adults. A 12-year-old girl wouldn't have stood a chance. Come out now, and we can discuss this calmly, the commander continued. We're not here to hurt anyone. Jake looked at Echo, whose purple eyes were wide with terror. Every instinct told him to keep hiding, to protect his friend at all costs. But the footsteps were getting closer, and there was nowhere left to run in the dead-end section of tunnel. Stay behind me, Jake whispered to Echo, then stepped out from behind the electrical equipment with his hands raised. 6 security guards in full armor immediately pointed their weapons at him. Commander Chen stepped forward, a tall man with gray hair and cold eyes that had seen too much war. Where is it, son? Chen asked, not unkindly but with absolute authority. Jake said firmly. Echo is a person, not an it. The alien, Jake. We know it's here. Before Jake could answer, Echo stepped out from behind him. The security team's weapons all swung toward her, but she made no aggressive moves. Instead, she looked up at Commander Chen with those huge purple eyes and made a soft clicking sound that somehow conveyed both fear and surrender. Remarkable, Chen breathed, studying Echo like she was a fascinating specimen. How long has it been hiding down here? Her name is Echo, and she's been here for about a month, Jake said, stepping protectively in front of his friend. She's not dangerous. She's just a kid whose family died. Son, you have no idea what you've been playing with, Chen said. This creature could be a spy, a weapon, anything. We're taking it back to headquarters for study. 2 guards moved toward Echo, but Jake spread his arms wide to block them. You can't. She's my friend. She saved my life when I had tunnel fever. Saved your life. Chen's expression sharpened with interest. How? Jake realized his mistake too late. The last thing Echo needed was for the military to know about her healing abilities. But before he could think of a lie, alarms started blaring throughout the colony. Red emergency lights began flashing in the tunnels, and Chen's communication device crackled to life. Commander, we've got multiple contacts on long-range sensors. Iron Fleet signature, massive force, ETA 40 minutes. Chen's face went white. How many ships? Initial count shows over 200 vessels, sir. It's the biggest fleet anyone's ever seen. The commander stared at his device in horror. New Denver colony had maybe 30 defense ships and a small orbital platform. Against 200 Iron Fleet warships, they didn't stand a chance. Begin immediate evacuation procedures, Chen ordered. All civilians to the emergency shelters. Launch all available fighters. But even as he gave the orders, everyone knew they were meaningless. The evacuation ships couldn't carry everyone, and the shelters wouldn't protect them from a full orbital bombardment. The colony was doomed. Echo had been listening to the exchanges with growing understanding. Her English wasn't perfect, but she knew enough words to grasp what was happening. The Iron Fleet, the same enemy that had destroyed her family and chased her people across the galaxy, had found this place too. She looked up at Jake with determination in her purple eyes, then walked past the security guards toward Commander Chen. Before anyone could stop her, she placed her small hands on the communication device in Chen's hands. Immediately, the device began glowing with the same soft blue light that came from Echo's skin. The communication channels filled with strange harmonics and clicking sounds as Echo somehow connected her mind to the colony's entire communication array. What is it doing? Chen demanded, but Jake understood. She's calling for help, Jake said, watching his friend concentrate with all her strength. Echo told me her people are out there somewhere. She's trying to reach them. Echo's glow grew brighter as she pushed more of her energy into the communication system. Through the device, her voice carried out into space, not the soft clicks Jake was used to hearing, but a powerful signal that traveled faster than light itself. For several long moments, nothing happened. The Iron Fleet kept getting closer while the colony's desperate evacuation efforts continued above ground. Then, just as Commander Chen was about to pull Echo away from the communication device, new signals appeared on the long-range sensors. Ships were approaching from a completely different direction, sleek, curved vessels that looked nothing like the brutal angular design of Iron Fleet warships. Incoming transmission, the communications officer reported over the radio. Unknown language, but the signal pattern matches what the alien child just broadcast. Echo looked up at Jake with exhausted but hopeful eyes. She had found her people, and they were coming to help. The question was whether they would arrive in time to save the colony from the approaching Iron Fleet armada. The Vari ships appeared on the horizon just as the first Iron Fleet fighters began their attack run on New Denver colony. Jake pressed his face against the observation window in the command center, where Commander Chen had brought him an Echo after her desperate call for help. Below them, the colony's defense platforms were firing everything they had at the approaching enemy forces. There. Jake pointed at the sleek, curved ships approaching from the opposite direction. Those are Echo's people. The Vari vessels moved differently than any ships Jake had ever seen. Instead of the straight-line attacks favored by human and Iron Fleet forces, they flowed through space like schools of fish, dodging enemy fire with impossible grace. Their weapons didn't shoot destructive beams like human ships. Instead, they fired pulses of energy that seemed to disrupt Iron Fleet systems without destroying the ships completely. Echo stood beside Jake, her small hands pressed against the window. Her skin was glowing brighter than Jake had ever seen it, and she was making rapid clicking sounds. Suddenly, the colony's translation computers came online, finally able to decode her language. "She's coordinating the attack," the communications officer said in amazement. "The alien child is giving tactical information to both fleets, ours and theirs." Commander Chen stared at Echo with new respect. "What kind of tactical information?" The translation computer converted Echo's clicks into words. "Iron Fleet ships have weak points at junction of wing and body. Human fighters should attack from below while Vari ships disable from above. Iron Fleet cannot fight coordinated assault." "She's right," Chen said after checking his tactical displays. "But how does she know our battle capabilities?" Jake smiled. "Echo is really smart. She's been watching and learning about humans for weeks. She knows how we think and fight." What happened next was unlike any space battle in human history. Instead of two separate forces fighting the same enemy, humans and Vari began working as one unified fleet. Human pilots, with their aggressive tactics and willingness to take risks, drew Iron Fleet fire and kept them busy. Meanwhile, Vari ships used their superior technology to disable enemy weapons and engines. The battle turned when Commander Chen made a decision that shocked everyone. All human ships, follow Vari targeting coordinates exactly. Trust them completely. It worked. Within 30 minutes, half the Iron Fleet armada was disabled or retreating. The rest found themselves caught between human determination and Vari precision, with no way to escape. But the real miracle happened after the fighting ended. Iron Fleet weapons had damaged several human ships, and the colony's medical facilities were overwhelmed with injured pilots and civilians. That's when the Vari ships docked with the colony, and Jake got his first look at Echo's people. They were all small like Echo, with the same glowing blue skin and large purple eyes. But they moved with purpose and compassion that took Jake's breath away. Without being asked, Vari healers spread throughout the colony's medical center, using their abilities to save human lives. Jake watched in amazement as a Vari healer no bigger than his little cousin worked on a pilot with severe burns. The alien's hands glowed with healing energy, and within minutes, the pilot's wounds were completely gone. The man sat up, staring at his healed hands in wonder. "Thank you," the pilot whispered to the Vari healer. The small alien made a clicking sound, and Jake realized he understood it without translation. It meant "You're welcome, and we are friends now" at the same time. Commander Chen found Jake and Echo in the medical center, watching human doctors and Vari healers work side by side. "Jake, I owe you an apology," the commander said quietly. "If you hadn't befriended this little one, we'd all be dead right now." Echo looked up at Chen and spoke in careful English. "Jake, good friend. Share food when I hungry. Humans, good people. Like my people." That's when Jake understood what made this moment so special. Echo hadn't just called her people to help fight the Iron Fleet. She'd convinced them that humans were worth saving because of one simple act of kindness from a 10-year-old boy who shared his lunch with a stranger. 3 months later, Jake stood in front of a classroom full of kids from all over the colony. Strapped to his wrist was a translation device that let him talk with Echo and any other Vari as easily as talking to his human friends. "The most important thing to remember about the Vari," Jake told the eager young faces, "is that they're just like us. They have families, they get scared, they feel happy when someone is kind to them." Echo stood beside him, no longer the frightened, starving child he'd found in the tunnels. She was healthy and confident now, wearing a special uniform that marked her as the first Vari human cultural ambassador. "Questions?" Jake asked the class. A little girl raised her hand. "What's the most important thing you learned from Echo?" Jake looked at his alien friend, who clicked encouragingly. "I learned that it doesn't matter what someone looks like or where they come from. If they are hungry, you share your food. If they are scared, you help them feel safe. And if they need a friend, you become one. Sometimes the biggest changes in the universe start with the smallest acts of kindness." Echo clicked something, and Jake's translator converted it. "And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is trust someone who looks different from you." The classroom erupted in applause, but Jake hardly heard it. He was thinking about that first day in the tunnels, when he'd made the choice to share his sandwich with a frightened alien child. He'd had no idea that simple moment of compassion would save his entire colony and create the first alliance between humans and another species. But maybe that's how all the best friendships begin, with someone willing to share what little they have with someone who needs it more.